couple weeks ago, I had to do a thing for BBC Radio about Jim Hines,
Yeah.
the first man to go under 10, and he had the world record for 15 years. But what people really got off on was that he's the only sub-10 sprinter to play regular NFL football games, 10 of them in 69 and 70. And what did you think of Jim Hines? Any thoughts? Did you have thoughts about Mr. Hines?
Yeah, I think Jim Hines and what he represented for track to football, I hear this all the time. And I think this might have originated from a guy like Jim Hines, not what he said, but just how other sports view track and field. So the statement is, if you're a track guy who plays football and you're successful, they say, oh, you're just a football player who ran track. But if you're a track guy who plays football and you're unsuccessful, they try to point to your toughness and say, you were just a track guy playing football. And I hate that connotation because I was a track guy. When I came out of high school, I was more well-known in track and field than I ever was in football, than I ever was in basketball, as you mentioned about the Gatorade Player of the Year. So people would start telling me that, oh, you were just a football player who ran track. I'm like, no. The mental fortitude, the toughness, the emotional strain that track and field puts on an athlete, that when they line up in that lane and the gun goes off and everyone's watching, to be able to pull through in those moments is not just a physical toll on the athlete. It's the most mental toll you can possibly imagine. So I am a believer that track athletes are tough. Track athletes can be physical because in order to run that 100, like I said before, you cannot have a quad strain or a tight calf muscle and still go out there and compete at the highest of your abilities. I do think there are more track athletes who can be very successful in football. They just have to change their own mindset to say, I don't want to get hit, this, that, and the other. You saw a guy at NCAAs this past year, Cole Beck from Virginia Tech, who ran 9.8. He's the fastest football player in the nation, and he plays wide receiver for Virginia Tech. Now, I don't know how much he plays or what his numbers are at this point, but I promise you the coaches saw that 9.8 and said, we need to get him on the football field and get the ball in his hands because nobody will be able to catch him. So I do think that there is more crossover than people want to admit. Some of the best football players in the NFL were dynamic track stars in high school, and we need to point that out more often. It's not that they couldn't cut it in track and field. It's just that they're using track and field as a bridge sport, and I don't think that that should be to the detriment of track and field. Track is its own monster, its own beast, and guys like Jim Hines prove that.